company known to have first taught the modern world how to operate the postal industry. The state-owned enterprise is now facing the challenges of an open market and a digital revolution which threatens its core business. Join us this weekend as CCTV speaks with Royal Mail's CEO, Moya Green, as she shares her views on how the centuries-old postal company is looking for new opportunities in an era of e-commerce. Only on Biz Talk. Looking forward to the postman, receiving letters from family, friends, and loved ones. That was once an experience enjoyed by many. Emotions and feelings vividly flow among handwritten sentences. But such a romantic setting seems to be slipping away from us as technology is progressing beyond our imagination. A sudden change occurred after the creation of the internet and the digital revolution. Gradually, in just a decade, we're beginning to forget those khaki-wearing cycle riders. The changes are not only social and cultural, but also economical. Email and online chatting software have severely impacted the traditional postal industry. The slumping mail and letters business have forced traditional postal enterprises to find new sources of growth. But the challenges which have hit the industry have also brought new opportunities to light. E-commerce is the savior. As more and more people began to purchase goods online, the demand of express delivery and parcels are increasing at a breakneck pace around the world. Farther and faster, that's the requirement for modern delivery services. Nowadays, one can order online in the morning and have the products delivered on the doorsteps by the afternoon. Every mail and letters company is trying to seize this opportunity. Britain's time-honored postal giant, the Royal Mail, has said that leveraging their strong and widespread network of outlets, traditional postal companies can provide effective and efficient services for online shoppers. However, they must also speed up the process of modernization and of upgrading to new technologies in order to let customers clearly know where their goods are and when they can expect to receive them.
Let's talk about your industry first, the postal industry, sort of at a crossroads right now with many different pressures facing it. How is the global postal industry doing right now, and sort of how Royal Mail fits into all of this?
There are big challenges facing everybody in this industry. The number of letters are going down. The whole digital revolution has had an impact. But the impact is also positive. We are seeing the explosion in e-commerce has meant that the number of parcels that we are delivering is going up. And it's going up very fast. And so we are used to delivering to very high service standards. And certainly e-commerce relies on a B2C network. And postal corporations, that's the sweet spot. I think the real challenge is to help our people, our employees, adjust quickly to these very significant changes.
Okay, but it still seemed, up until at least the last financial year, that the bulk of revenues came from the letters business, either business to business, consumer to consumer, or business to consumer. But we know now that you can get the message across with the click of a button, and also businesses can choose to advertise online. So it seems like the core of Royal Mail's business might be threatened by the advent of digital media. Is this industry slowly fading away, do you think?
Not at all. Almost half of Royal Mail's revenues, half of the £8.6 billion, is coming from parcels. And last year, in a recession year in the UK, our volumes are up and our revenues are way up. In fact, we just put out our half-yearly results. And our parcel volumes are up 6% in the UK alone, and revenues are up 13% in the UK. So the way I see the challenge for the business, it is really on the operational side to convert what operationally was in past times a letters delivery network and to make that just as important a parcels delivery network. Fully 8% of total retail in the UK is e-commerce. It's online shopping. That's fantastic for the Royal Mail. Because as I mentioned, in order to be a really strong online retailer, you must have a very reliable partner to deliver on your behalf. Amazon, for example, which is the biggest online retailer in the world, over 50 billion US in revenues, growing 30% a year, more than 30% a year in some markets. That is the Royal Mail's fourth largest customer. And we are very proud that you have a far greater propensity to buy online in the UK. In fact, 70% of UK residents just recently said we are more likely to buy online if Royal Mail is the delivery partner. So no, I think these changes, obviously we have to manage them, but I'm very confident that we can, and increasingly very profitably.
But the parcels industry is very, very competitive these days with UPS and FedEx and DHL, these really established worldwide brands. Can Royal Mail win at this game?
Yes, I think so. Because even though the large integrators are very, very significant brand names globally, great companies, FedEx and UPS, both of them, they are primarily business-to-business networks. And they are struggling to create the surface network that you have to have in order to take advantage of where the growth in traffic is coming from, which is business-to-consumer online shopping. So I think we can do very well, even in the face of great names like that. And also, I would point out, Royal Mail is a very great name. Royal Mail has been in this business for much longer than FedEx or UPS. And today, we have a very significant part of the UK market. With GLS, our partner in Europe, we have a very significant player in 42 European countries. And, this is a great company. I'm sure, both UPS and FedEx would tell you, Michael, what a great company GLS is. Their standards of delivery are very high. They have some of the best margins in Europe. So, yes, I'm always humbled by great competitors like UPS and FedEx, but I think that our performance has demonstrated that where e-commerce is concerned, people are far more comfortable if we are the delivery agent.
Gold medals and golden mails. During the 2012 London Olympics, some of the city's iconic red mailboxes received a royal treatment and got a golden makeover. They were actually painted by Royal Mail, the government-owned postal service in Britain. The golden makeover was a way to pay honor to Britain's gold medal Olympians. Royal Mail can trace its roots all the way back to 1516 to the Tudor years, when Henry VIII established a Master of the Posts, a post which eventually evolved into the office of the Postmaster General. The Royal Mail Service was first made available to the public in 1635. It developed into the General Post Office in 1660. In 1969, the General Post Office was changed from a government department to a statutory corporation, known simply as the Post Office. Under the Postal Services Act of 2000, the Post Office became a public limited company named Consignia. 2 years later, the organization adopted the name of the letters delivery business, Royal Mail. The time-honored postal giant finally lost its 350-year-old monopoly in Britain from 2006, when the country's £6.5 billion mail industry was opened up to full competition. From then on, any licensed operator will be able to deliver mail to business and residential customers. Royal Mail once controlled 99% of the postal market in Britain. But as competition and new technologies chip away at its market share and bottom line, Royal Mail needed to find new and sustainable streams of revenue for the future. Now the group feels it's found that by focusing on the burgeoning online retailing market. The Royal Mail Group is now investing £75 million in its express and international delivery arm Parcel Force, a move which will create 1,000 jobs and fuel a decisive shift away from delivering letters to servicing online retailers instead. Royal Mail said the investment will fund a 4-year expansion program and is part of the company's strategy to convert the rise in parcel volumes into profitable growth. In the last reported financial year, the group's parcels business accounted for 48% of total revenues.
Okay, and Royal Mail, of course, like you mentioned, a very storied organization, can trace its roots all the way back to Henry VIII, huh? All the way back to 1516.
Actually, some say even earlier, but I think
Even
that's
earlier.
when we had the organized postal operation.
Okay, so obviously we don't want to see such a hallowed institution disappear. How do you make people, and how do you make your people believe in Royal Mail going forward?
I think that's the hardest challenge. And Mr. Lee and I of China Post were comparing notes, and we agreed in his vast organization with 900,000 people, and in our very large organization with about 154,000 people, that's the biggest challenge. Because, change is difficult anytime, but change when you have to get smaller is even more difficult for people. People have spent their lives at the company. And it's one thing for young people who are just starting their working lives to be adaptable because they're just on the beginning of their path. If you've been doing something for 20 years and you've done it the same way, to ask them to do something completely different or to do everything in a completely different way, it is very hard. I think you have to use the tools that I'm sure you would think of. You have to communicate a lot. You have to be visible. You have to be out in the field. You have to make sure that managers get out of their offices and get on the floor of every delivery office, of every plant, on every shift, talk to people. You have to become very collaborative with your unions. The truth is they represent our people, and if they are going to be effective representing our people through change, it has to be a collaborative relationship with your unions. There is no other way to go. And, communication is the most important tool. We have spent a lot of time in the past 2 years communicating at every level inside the Royal Mail. And we are now tracking how our people think and how they perceive the business and perceive the future of the business. And we can see that it's getting better. People now understand. Actually, the vast majority of people understand now that there is a need for change. That doesn't make it any easier to actually change your working hours or change the equipment that you use. It doesn't make it easier, but at least the rationale for change, you don't have to spend, a long time on that anymore. It's more about training and giving people the time to adapt and trying, really, really trying to make sure that they adapt fast enough so that, as you say, it's a very competitive world out there. There are lots of players in the parcels business, so that our people adapt fast enough to keep growing that share of the business that is in the growing segment of the business.
When you first took the helm of Royal Mail back in 2010, the company seemed to be in a very dire financial situation. It was bleeding cash left and right, problems all over the place. When you first landed, what were some of your initial thoughts? Did you ever ask yourself in the first few days, what in the world did I get myself into?
No, and it's used to operating at a very, very high service standard. Probably here in China, we're still delivering 6 times a day, but in the UK, it's not necessary to deliver 6 times a day. It is necessary, though, to deliver 6 days a week, and it is necessary to deliver at a very, very high minimum service level, which we do at 93.5% on time. It's probably one of the highest minimum service standards in the world. So no, I never felt that. I felt that there were some big building blocks that if we could really adjust those, we could make a significant difference, and we have. For example, with Her Majesty's government, we've been able to restructure the balance sheet. We've been able to deal with the historical pension liability, and all of that effort has now been approved by the European Commission. We had a regulatory framework which was a stranglehold on Royal Mail. There really was no way for the company to be successful. Over 80% of our revenues were price controlled, and price controlled at a very low level. We've been able to basically abolish that approach to regulation. We have a new regulator that has taken a wholly different approach. Now only 10% of our revenues are subject to price control. Our regulator understands that this approach to regulation was a failure, and we've been able to capitalize now on the regulatory freedoms that we have. And so here we are, less than 3 years later, a company that had been cash negative for a lot of years and unprofitable in its core business. We're now cash positive. At the group level, our margins have gone from 0.3% half year last year to 3.3% half year.
As the European debt crisis has pushed the regional economy into a recession, European companies are focusing more on cooperation with Chinese firms. China's e-commerce industry presents an enticing opportunity with over 500 million internet users in the country. An annual report on Chinese consumers released by consulting group McKinsey claims that over half of all households in China will prefer to shop online by 2020. The most recent example of this growth was the Singles' Day holiday, which saw Chinese online retailing giant Taobao achieve sales of around $3 billion in just 24 hours. It was estimated that there were over 800,000 couriers on the way to consumers that week, setting a new record in China. Royal Mail Group announced just this August that its parcels arm, GLS, is partnering with ZJS Express, a leading national Chinese express company, for a new B2B parcel delivery service. The service, named Euro Business Parcel, will take items between China and Europe in 3 to 5 days. That's 1 to 2 days longer than is offered by the current express services in China, but is 10 to 20% cheaper as well. China is currently the largest exporter to the European Union. Industry data shows that over the past 5 years, China's exports to the EU increased by about 50%, leading to a rapid growth in China to Europe parcel volume over this period. The businesses of GLS under the Royal Mail Group covers 42 European countries, while ZJX Express in China also has seen its services spreading nationwide. The combination of the two marked that Royal Mail, one of the UK's oldest postal services, officially entered the Chinese market. It will be another competitor here for international deliveries. Compared to big rivals such as FedEx, UPS, and DHL, which have their own fleets in China and worldwide, the Euro Business Parcel have no direct affiliated fleets, for now. But Royal Mail believes that the existing network of GLS and ZJS will be enough, and it has the advantage of lower prices due to lower costs.
So it seems like you're changing strategy and emphasis now on the e-commerce market, on the parcels business. Are there any sort of other revenue streams that you're considering, newer ones? And does Royal Mail have sort of this creative plan to sort of secure these new sources of revenue for the long term?
Absolutely. Part of the big change that's going on in our operation right now, changing delivery methods and procedures and adding technology everywhere, is all about capturing the growth in the parcels business, particularly the e-commerce side. But we have other strategies as well, and this is where China is very important for Royal Mail. We have for decades had a very collaborative relationship with China Post. And China Post is moving increasingly to capture the growth that is occurring as a result of online retailing as well. So we are following similar strategies. And into Europe, China is a great exporter. As much as 17% of imports into Europe are coming from China. We think that we are very well poised with GLS to be a strong player to facilitate that growth. And now, in addition to our wonderful and historical relationship with China Post, we are broadening our relationships to other players in China, players like ZJS, for example. And so we are looking at this great market which is developing so quickly and developing in areas that we think are areas of strength for us.
Okay, so could that be a very serious strategy going forward? Is it possible maybe to focus on a niche market like China for Royal Mail and then just really outperform and excel in this niche market?
Well, I think in these sorts of growing areas, whether they're geographic areas or product areas like e-commerce, you need great partners. And we feel that the Royal Mail Group has positioned itself to be exactly that kind of partner, a great partner both for China Post into the UK and for ZJS into Europe. And so, yes, it will eventually go both ways, but right now we are following similar strategies, and because of our strengths in Europe and the UK, and because of China Post's strengths here in China and ZJS's strengths here in China, we think that the partnership is going to capitalize on the growth in the best way possible.
Okay, but what worries me a little bit is throughout the past year and a half, there have been some trade frictions, trade tensions between China and the EU. Are you concerned about that going forward in terms of how it might affect business in the next 1 or 2 years? And possible trade frictions coming up as well because the economy is sort of in a downturn and there might be more trade tensions.
Well, you know what, you have to keep your eye on all of the strands of discussion that go on at various levels. But I can tell you at the corporate level, in terms of the relationships that exist between Royal Mail Group and China Post, and the relationship that is developing with ZJS, that has not been at all a barrier to our moving forward to capitalize on what seems to be an accelerating rate of growth out of China.
In July 2010, Royal Mail ushered in its first female chief executive, Moya Green. As a Canadian, Green is also the first person from outside the British Isles to take up the role at the storied postal service. Green had extensive experience in the postal industry when she headed Canada Post back in 2005 and oversaw its turnaround. Royal Mail's UK parcels and letters business have struggled in recent years as customers increasingly turn to email. But improvements to its sorting process, staff reductions, and price increases helped the unit swing to an operating profit. Royal Mail posted a first profit in 4 years in June this year, saying that its core postal business is also back in the black. Momentum behind Royal Mail's privatization has gathered pace this year, with the European Commission clearing the UK government to take on Royal Mail's hefty pension fund. It has also raised stamp prices in order to help stem losses from declining letter volumes as well.
Okay, Ms. Green, you also did achieve 2 historical feats by joining the company, of course. You are the first female and also the first non-Briton, you're Canadian, of course, to run Royal Mail. Talk to us about some of the challenges that this may have presented, and could these also been some advantages as well?
Well, I think the challenge of being an outsider coming into a company that is an iconic company like Royal Mail, which had immediate problems that had to be addressed, the challenge that I noticed the most was that I didn't have the network in the United Kingdom that I have in Canada. So if I've taken on big things in Canada, I had a lot of help because I had grown up in Canada, I'd gone to school in Canada, and, you know, with only 33 million people, at a certain point you get to be my age and it gets to be a small country. And so you know a sufficient number of people in various places, and there is no problem that you cannot reach out and get a helping hand because you know people. So I think coming into an iconic company where things had to change quickly, that was probably the biggest challenge. In terms of opportunity, I think if you have to, you know, get your arms around something big fast, and if you have to make changes fast, it actually helps to be an outsider because you see things in a different way. And things that others may have felt, oh, that has been around so long it will never change. Well, I didn't feel that because I didn't know how long it had been around, and all I knew is it had to change. And it helps to point out with the eyes of an outsider other ways of doing things that will probably be more quickly successful for the company. So it has advantages and disadvantages, but so far it's all worked out.
Okay. Ms. Green, you also have extensive public sector experience in Canada, overseeing the deregulation of the Canadian airline industry, seeing the turnaround of Canada Rail, and also very direct experience in the postal industry as well in terms of turning around Canada Post, and also very extensive private sector experience in terms of working at some of Canada's biggest and best banks. So can we say, now that you're running Royal Mail, that this was literally a match made in heaven for you.
Well, I do think that everything I've done, Michael, has sort of converged very nicely to help me with the particular challenges that Royal Mail faces today. Leaders are appropriate for a time. You know, they bring their individual strengths and hopefully they match the challenges that the company faces at that time. And then you need a new generation of leadership to take over. So I do feel that public sector experience, helped me understand the iconic place of the Royal Mail, helped me understand what it is to be a government-owned entity. I think that the financial experience is going to help me get outside capital into the company. I think that the deregulation experience has helped me understand that, there comes a point in time in an industry's evolution when you need a wholly different regulatory approach. And we had that in the early 90s in Canada for transportation. And I think the understanding is now very great in the United Kingdom that the year 2011 was the time that that change had to come for this industry in the UK. So all of those things have come together at the right time, I think, to give me the experience to handle the most important challenges of Royal Mail.
Okay, but turning around a business, a company, or an organization, ultimately there were some downsizing involved. Royal Mail had to downsize in order to survive. But then again, it's not just about numbers and the bottom line, right? We're talking about affecting the livelihoods of families. Does that sort of maybe keep you up at night, or is it a necessary evil that we have to deal with?
Well, if you're not worried about it, then you're not paying attention to truly the most important stakeholder that you have, which is the people that are out there every day doing the business. So you have to be worried about it, but you also have to be worried about the future livelihood of people and having the right number of people in the right place, trained the right way for where the growth happens. I've been very happy with the relationship that we have with our unions in the Royal Mail. We have strong agreements in place that help people transition from the Royal Mail to something new. We have a voluntary redundancy program, and we've been able to manage the downsizing that has been essential through voluntary means. We've been able to support our people's income security as they go through that kind of change. But there's no doubt about it that it's very hard. Nobody wants to do it. But the truth is, Michael, there's no future for anyone at the company if we can't position the company and reconfigure the company for the type of business we have to be.
Well, it's a wonderful vision. Many thanks for your time, Ms. Green.
Thank you, Michael.